Hello and welcome to ATP Report. I'm Barry Nussbaum. We have a terrific guest today, and it's a kind of an emergency situation, so sit tight and learn a lot. We have Dr. Ryan Cole with us today. You've probably heard of him. He received his medical degree from the Medical College at Virginia. He was president of the Student Family Practice Association. He was in the immunology lab. He then spent 5 years at the Mayo Clinic doing his residency. He's been everywhere, surgical pathology. He founded Cole Diagnosis in 2004. It's a nationally recognized licensed medical testing laboratory where he runs the place. And get this, since then, they've done 40,000 blood and biopsy patients annually. And last year they did 100,000 COVID pathology tests. If anybody in this country is an example of an expert in COVID pathology, I would think that's you, Doctor. Thanks for coming on with us.
Thank you, Barry. It's an honor to be with you today, and thank you for the kind introduction. Grateful to be here to share some science and truth, and hopefully straighten out the confusion in the minds of our politicians and wake some people up.
Well, I got a lot of questions for you, so let's dive into the science. And let's start with the, I guess, head slash sort of politician expert in this. The CDC director, Rochelle Walensky, just said that the COVID vaccines do not prevent COVID infection and they don't prevent COVID transmission. So, doctor, as an expert, why are we mandating vaccines?
For no good scientific reason. They don't prevent infection. They don't prevent transmission. They don't prevent disease. And we see that 9 out of 10 deaths in the United Kingdom right now and in Israel right now are in the double or triple vaccinated. So, this is now a death disease of the vaccinated. So why would we force a shot? That the virus that they were made for is extinct. That original Wuhan variant is not existent in humanity. We're multiple variants on from now. We have enough mutations that if you get the shot, number 2 or 3, if you've already had, I'm not here to judge who did or didn't get a shot. What I'm here to say is that if you continue to get shots, you increase your risk of getting COVID multiple fold. And again, that's good data out of the United Kingdom NHS system.
Above age 8. Explain that. That's a revolutionary statement.
Absolutely. Getting COVID or getting the shot increases your chance of getting COVID, not preventing. Not protecting. It actually suppresses. So this was in the data dump from Pfizer's data just this past week. They showed that after you get a shot, you are broadly immune suppressed for the next week to several weeks. And this is why every time a shot would roll out in any nation, you would see their curve of infection go upward, because you were literally immune suppressing that population. And so here we are saying, you are going to lose your job, which we heard those, wonderful firefighters did, and your pension for not acquiescing to something that doesn't work for a virus that doesn't exist against a virus that's here. And if you get that shot, you're going to have an increased risk of disease and complications and death. It's absurd.
I have so many questions. I don't even know where to start. Let's start with this one. I've got a good friend of mine. He and his wife were told to get the vaccines, so they did. Then they were told they were immune, but a couple months later, they'll be immune as long as they get the second shot, which they complied. Then they were told, well, you're not really immune because you didn't get the booster. Long story short, they now have 2 shots, 2 boosters. The wife got COVID so badly, twice, she went to the hospital. So I called them up and I said, my goodness, between the 2 of you, you've had 4 injections and you both had COVID several times. Why get the vaccine? And you know what his comment was? Well, at least we didn't die. People are thinking the vaccine prevents death.
You know what? It doesn't. And here's the dumb thing about a statement like that. Most people that get COVID don't die. 99.9% of healthy people under the age of 75 don't die from the disease. So they say, oh, it's my vaccine that saved me, or my symptoms were less because I got the shot. Nonsense. half people that got COVID never had a symptom, and they have antibodies and they have T cell response. So, that justification in people's minds, it's a confirmation bias. It's like, oh, I did the societal genuflection of a jab with a gene shot that doesn't provide immunity, and it's my purity symbol and signal, and my genuflection to the cult or church of the COVID gene shot. I don't know. It's insanity because, like you said at the beginning, doesn't prevent disease, doesn't prevent transmission, doesn't prevent death, doesn't prevent hospitals. It's crazy. There's no evidence, and it's a shot that causes a lot of harm in a lot of people. Be it, it's clotting, inflammation of the heart, neurologic disorders, the awakening of other viruses that lay latent in our body because of that immune suppression that we mentioned a minute ago. People's latent viruses wake up, and now they're sick.
Let's come back.
Yeah,
Let's come back.
yeah, we can come back to that. Sure, you bet. I could go on and on.
I've got a really important question based on my childhood. I remember as a kid being told, well, Barry, if you get chickenpox, the disease, then you'll be immune for the rest of your life. And I remember the moms in our neighborhood. Now, I'm a little older than most of the population, but the moms wanted you to get chickenpox, measles, and the mumps, so you wouldn't get it later. And then as time went on and I became a dad, I heard natural immunity is better than artificial immunity caused by a vaccine. Isn't that true?
It's always true. It's always true, because when you get natural infection to any virus, you get exposure to all of the proteins, all of the bumps and lumps and shapes and locks and keys on that virus. Now, if you get a vaccine, you're getting a small portion of a virus. So like, for example, with these shots, you're making some antibodies, not very good T cell memory to the spike of this coronavirus. But you're not making antibodies that envelope, membrane, nucleocapsid, all the 28 other proteins. And you're not making T cell memories to all those. So now you have this very narrow window of immunity. And when you get this particular type of gene shot, which actually causes immune suppression, you don't make a special type of antibody in your circulation that goes to your nose and your eyes and your throat called circulatory IgA or secretory IgA. You make IgG, but you don't make secretory IgA. So those who've had COVID, now the virus comes in through your nose, your eyes, your tears, your mouth. The secretory IgA is like tiny little mops. They're like tail end to end like this. And they like mop up the virus. But if you get the vaccine, your body doesn't make that. So now the place where the virus comes into our body, you can have 4 shots or 99 shots, and you're still not going to have that antibody. The vaccinated are equal or higher transmitters of the virus than those who are COVID recovered and have a broad natural immunity. It's basic science. This is immunology. I did PhD work in immunology my first year of medical school. Virology, pathology, these are basic principles of science. And we're ignoring basic principles. You're right. A natural infection, even Fauci, I mean, the video surfaced this week of him talking about flu a couple of years ago. He's like, of course, a broad infection, a recovery from a natural infection is always better than a vaccine. I mean, it's out there in the data. Why they chose to lie about this for the last 2 years, I don't know about their motive. I mean, I can only suppose, but I can say this is basic science, and they're violating every tenet of basic science, and they're violating separate but equal Title VII human rights in terms of segregating people, firing people, because they're firing you for not being an experimental subject in an experimental shot that hasn't completed trials and is not approved. And they're making people lose their families, their homes, their livelihoods for something not based on science. All of these people firing people are evil, criminally minded people, because they are punishing people based on no scientific cause whatsoever. If you get the shot, you have a higher chance of being sick and or dying from the shot than not getting the shot at this point. It is evil for them to even require it in any industry, business, or entity, period. That's
So, Doctor,
basic science.
is COVID endemic? And
It is.
if it is, what does that mean?
that means the virus is here to stay. Just like we get a flu that, circulates every season, or along comes a common cold. Those are generally the same viruses that have just mutated a little bit each season. And, flus and colds compete with each other. They come back every year. Same thing. Now, this virus, coronaviruses always mutate. That's why a vaccine for this virus, I knew from day one when they said Operation Warp Speed, I said, no, Operation Warped Greed, because you cannot ever vaccinate against the coronavirus because it always mutates. It's like playing whack-a-mole. It's always going to be one little mole popping up out of that hole ahead of you. Those mutations always happen. So
So,
endemic means it has mutated. It is a milder form of the virus now. Most of us have immunity because most of us have had COVID, but there's enough people that will always carry a buzz amount of it that it's always going to be present at a low buzz level, but we shouldn't see these giant curves of it again.
so then why, doctor, is Dr. Fauci hinting, and he said this a number of times, that yearly boosters are a good idea? Like forever, you're going to line up and get a Pfizer shot once a year. Does this make any sense to you?
No, he's the dawn of one of the biggest mafias in America, and that's the NIH. He controls all science by funding whoever's research he wants to fund, and he's beholden to the large pharmaceutical companies, and they get royalties. NIH holds the patent to the spike protein that they license to the Moderna, as many billions as Moderna makes. The NIH makes billions. It's a complete mob mafia scheme. It's a RICO violation. Absolutely. All the agencies, NIH, CDC, FDA, are corporate captured. They are owned by industry. They don't represent the people. He wants you to get a booster so his agencies and his cohorts and buddies make money. It has absolutely nothing to do with your wellness and health. And it's not just this vaccine. Here's the problem. A lipid nanoparticle plus mRNA will always be harmful. And so they've snuck this new technology in without proof, because normally a safe product in the vaccine industry takes 5 to 10 or more years. So they snuck this in under an emergency authorization. The lipid nanoparticle goes everywhere. The mRNA persists in the body because of the pseudouridine. So what he's doing is giving carte blanche to a new dangerous technology. It's not going to work for influenza. It's not going to work for HIV. It's not going to work for RSV, because in and of itself, the lipid nanoparticle and the mRNA are dangerous, and they persist in the body. And so now he's, created this open door for pharma to say, oh, we've got a new type of vaccine for you. They haven't done the appropriate science. They haven't done the appropriate safety protocols. They bypassed all federal regulation and law. It's a moneymaker for Tony, and it's an attention grabber. I mean,
So tell me this.
It's evil.
He's adding in the kids in a way that I just can't understand. I went on the UNICEF site this morning, and the worldwide database for COVID is updated as of a week ago. And worldwide deaths now, doctor, for kids under the age of 20 in the whole world are about 0.4 of 1%. Meaning if you get COVID, your chances of dying if you're under 20 are 99.6 survival, 0.4, less than 1% death rate. So the death rates, and that includes, by the way, third world countries with bad sanitation, right? Bad healthcare, bad refrigeration, and poor sanitary standards compared to ours. Why would you mask kids that don't die from this?
Well, only because you have a twisted, sick, fearful mind. That's the only reason. I mean, whoever would mask a child has a twisted, sick, fearful mind, and they don't understand science. Because have the masks anywhere in the world stopped transmission of this disease? Absolutely not. Have the shots been beneficial to children? Absolutely not. Do children die from this disease? Absolutely not. Healthy children, look at Germany, not one, no, do the handful of sick children who were severely ill anyway, genetic disorders, cystic fibrosis, cancer on chemo. Yes, they were susceptible. They don't have immune systems essentially. So no matter what virus came along, they were highly probable or susceptible to dying from it. Sweden kept their schools open, 1.8 million children. How many deaths in that cohort of children? 0. Germany, how many deaths? 0. United States, several hundred, yes, those were the sick children I mentioned. If you look at that and break it down, do healthy children die from COVID? Absolutely not. So their risk of dying from the disease is statistically zero. Now, their risk of being injured and harmed permanently for life from this shot is significant.
All right, that was my next question. What are the most widely reported side effects from the vaccine?
Okay, number one we hear about is inflammation of the heart. If you look at the data out of Hong Kong, 1 in 2,700 young men, 1 in 2,700. That would be, if we give every child in America this shot, that would be tens upon tens upon tens of thousands of children with their hearts ruined for life and or death. And you know what? Once you get inflammation of the heart, there's no such thing as mild myocarditis that you hear these idiot institutions and physicians talk about. A recent study came out just a week ago that showed how long that inflammation is persisting and the scarring in these children's hearts. So why would you give something to a child who has no risk of dying from the disease and saying, but we're going to give you a shot anyway and risk your heart? Now, number two is neurologic injuries. And we're seeing seizures, we're seeing tremor disorders, we're seeing motor disorders, we're seeing paralysis, we're seeing gut motility disorders. Out the wazoo, autoimmune disorders. Now the body is attacking itself because of a bad antibody and a bad immune response. You know, that's a third critical area. Number four, and again, this goes to my comment on the lipid nanoparticles that go everywhere. It's a device you can't control. It's like garlic, it diffuses everywhere. I don't care if you've got a crack under the door, the dark garlic smells getting through. Same thing with these lipid nanoparticles. That's why they can get into the brain. That's why they can cause neural inflammation. They can get into the ovaries. And what do we know about long-term fertility studies with this modality? We know it concentrates in the ovaries. We know the lipid nanoparticles are inflammatory. We know the mRNA is inflammatory and makes a protein that binds to the receptor on the ovaries. Are we sterilizing a generation? Well, we know that in rat studies, implantation rates went down by 16% in one study and went down another significant percentage in a mouse study. We know that if we look at the defense data that was covered up, hidden, and frozen, there was almost a 300% increase in infertility visits in the military after the shots rolled out. So we have heavy signal. We know that in the males, heavy percentage of increased infertility after the shots happened as well. So we are playing with fire. We are playing with our children's bodies. It is not a 2-year-old's job to protect an 80-year-old. It's an 80-year-old's job to protect a 2-year-old. And we are putting their minds, their bodies at risk with a shot. We're putting their psychological well-being at risk from masks they don't need, inhibiting their language development, inhibiting their social development, inhibiting their IQs. It's insanity. And we as a world have gone collectively this mad. Good God, people, wake up.
So tell us, you're involved in something this weekend, doctor, that's part of that wake up. What's going on and what do you want people to know about it?
Well, we're having a large rally in Los Angeles, Grant Park. Hopefully we'll have a couple 100,000 people show up. There will be several of the leading truth-telling doctors. We've got a short segment. There are going to be political leaders. There are going to be musicians. There are going to be thought leaders. There are going to be large names in the realms of media there to basically declare, look, pandemic's over. Time for the world to be awake, not woke. It's time to get over these draconian mandates, these draconian, insane, harmful shots, the stupidity of the fear. It's time to wake up, live life again. The pandemic's over. It is time for every mandate to go away, but more importantly, for the emergency powers to be dropped. Constitution needs to reign supreme. We're at a point in humanity where this is about pure evil, power, and control and has nothing to do with virus anymore and didn't for a long time.
Sunday, it's at what park?
You know what? I'm gonna have to double check.
Grant. I think it's Grant.
It's Grant.
We're gonna put
it's Grant. I'm in so many meetings this week. Yeah, do that please, because I'm flying from here to Houston, then Houston to LA, because I'm in so many meetings. I'm living day to day right now, just trying to keep up. I know I'll be there.
Thank you so much for coming on today. Where can people find out about you and read the stuff that you're writing and publishing?
Yeah, so I basically archive all of it and ask some of the most common questions at rcole, the letter R as in Ryan, rcolemd.com. And that's the best place to find a synthesis of what I've been doing. So rcolemd.com.
I urge all of you out there that want to know, both for yourself, your children, your grandchildren, your parents, check him out. Ask a real scientist what's going on and get some data. Make your own decisions. You need to be better informed out there. For ATP Report, sure appreciate you joining us today. I'm Barry Nussbaum.